In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today revolves around Sri Lanka. Can Sri Lanka withstand the Trump tariffs and also the Sri Lankan economy? Joining us this evening on the show are Professor Aruna, Shanthaarchchi, Department of Economics and Statistics, University of Sabaragamuwa, Professor S.P. Premaratne, Department of Economics, Colombo University, Aminda Lakmal, Senior Lecturer, Department of Marketing Management, Dayaratne University, as well as Sanjeewa Dayaratne, Researcher. To pose questions from our panelists this evening, on to my immediate right is Tariffs, and on to my immediate left is Shanthaarchchi. You too can join in as far as the conversation is concerned. The number to send in your messages via WhatsApp is 076 656 5353. The number once again, 076 656 5353. Let's get the ball rolling today with Professor Aruna Shanthaarchchi, Department of Economics and Statistics, University of Sabaragamuwa. Professor, understanding about this Trump tariffs, first of all, let's understand how did this 44% come into play? Was it a haphazard manner in which that 44% was slapped on Sri Lankan exports initially, or was it a statistical analogy that was behind this 44%?
Okay, pleased to be here with you, and also basically that actually this tariff is determined based on the trade balance actually, because the US side, they always consider last 10 years their trade deficit or the trade balance actually. Just it is a micro level analysis here, not macro level. Each country, based on each country, they observe that they are export-import difference and they identify the trade deficit. So then in Sri Lankan context, with the Sri Lanka, in our country actually 88% trade deficit here. It means their side the minus, our side positive here. Very simply that actually when we are getting some earning just around 3 billions export to the USA and we are getting some US dollars, but same meantime the US getting from our side is only 444 millions per year. So that is obvious, that is 88% come from that based on the trade deficit here. Now then 88 difference divided by the 2, it means here 44%. So that is the simple formula for the imposing the tariff rate here. But anyhow, that is the initial rate, but after some set of negotiation or whatever the Trump decide that it may be not suitable for, therefore they reduce 44% to 30% here.
So what was the discussion in your opinion was with the Trump administration in the initial round, Professor?
Yeah, really, because actually the initial discussion is very successful actually, because otherwise we cannot reduce from 44 to the 30% tariff rate. Fortunately actually now we are at the point with the 30%, but 30% plus additionally 11%, therefore 41% tariff rate. So because out of 100 or 112 countries, the Trump already issued the letter for 25 countries only, and also they should have to be defined for the other countries also, because just we should realize that in Sri Lankan side the bargaining power is zero actually, because once we consider with the US market and US economy, because they are basically 302 million populations with a market, very powerful market, and also their GDP around $30,000 billions, 30,000, but in Sri Lankan context we are just only 80 billions here. You can imagine the small market with. And also the US side, their per capita income is 89,000 rupees per annum, US dollars, but in Sri Lankan it's just $4,000 here. So therefore their side, and meantime the US realized that their trade deficit is last 5-year trade deficit around 1.2 US dollars trillion. It means 1,200 billions trade deficit in the US side here. So that's the reason, that's the main reason Trump decided that the micro level analysis for just they look at individual country level trade deficit and based on some simple formula, they imply the tariff rate here. Therefore, there are some economic logic behind the tariff, and also there are some economic logic behind the formula and the percentage, not just hypothetically or just put in the tariff rate here.
Right. So, for us to understand, Professor, a little bit more, what are the possibilities of Sri Lanka reducing this number? Because if you look at a country like Indonesia, it is stated on social media as well as independent websites that they have been able to negotiate the prices down to 19%. And that came at a cost because they have gone ahead and invested approximately around 10 billion US dollars on the US economy. But Sri Lanka is not in that position. So what was the thinking, what would be the thinking of the delegation that is going to the US on the 18th, that's 2 days from now? What must they look at?
Yeah, actually just negotiation just compared to the other countries, actually less power for the Sri Lankan side. You know, the real situation is just as I mentioned, that we are just importing from the USA 450 million US dollars something. Yeah. So this is one. And also out of that, it means we are importing very sensitive, it means inelastic items. 80% out of those values are actually intermediate items. Those are compulsory and necessary items and the capital items for our garment industry and other industrial product here. So therefore we are importing inelastic items. Inelastic means less response to the price change here. Even the 20-25% of whatever the price change, but we should have to import those because our export market and industrials totally depend on those inputs here. The one side. On the other side, you know, just our export is elastic items. Elastic means just a smaller price change that would be significantly demand change. Elastic, it means garment industry, look at here. Those are not compulsory items.
So but why can't we, just for us to understand, Professor, why can't we make 0% tariffs from the US products, that's 425 million US dollars annually? Why can't we make it 0%? Because at the end of the day, we are in a situation where 80% of our exports to the US is quite a big number.
Yeah.
Why can't we do that?
Now, is it possible? It is possible actually, because the one side is just one we consider the substitution, it means here, no substitute for a USA market here, because our export is our major partner for the USA, that number one, because out of our total export, 25% is depend on the US market. So therefore, we can zero tariff rate introduce for the US item here, but it is not significant impact to the US economy. That's the point here. The value wise means, or volume wise, is not much impact to the US economy. So, but Vietnam, or as I mentioned, the Indonesians, actually their component, their volumes, and also the percentage is significant impact for the US market here, because they are just importing many items from the US market, and also that would be indirectly and directly impact from that. But that's the reason for our percentage at the moment is quite less, or very small volumes and quantity.
Can we make it 0%? Is there a possibility?
Is it possible? The zero tariff, it means our
imports,
side. For imports we can apply for the zero.
Can we do that?
We can do that.
But why aren't we doing it?
So that's, I think, the next couple of weeks the government decide that one, because it's still discussion ongoing here, not finalized here. That should be continued here. Just start here now. So therefore, I think most probably it means within next couple of weeks that would happen both. Basically.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Professor Aruna Shanthaarchchi, Department of Economics and Statistics, University of Sabaragamuwa. I now move my attention towards Professor S. Premaratne, Department of Economics, Colombo University. Professor, now Sri Lanka, a lot of people say that it's a victory for Sri Lanka because we've been able to reduce tariffs by 14% up to 30%. If you look at countries like Bangladesh, which is also exporting a substantial amount of garments to apparels to the US, they have been only able to reduce it by 2%. How do you view this in the context of an professor in economics as to whether is this a big victory for Sri Lanka or not?
So I think Professor Anura explained the theories and concept behind. So what lastly what you mentioned also, and you asked that point, I'll start whether we can reduce the tariff to 0%, and then I'll come back to you.
Yes.
And this is something like that. I will explain this one, and I'll tell a very small story. Sometime back, I went out of the Colombo, and so I had to stay a few minutes and somewhere in the park the car. Behind the ground, I saw that some children play cricket. So batsman hit the ball, and the fielders go that direction, and the batsman hit the ball the other direction. Now, what I feel that the Sri Lankan government also plays something like that is not necessary. So what he said, theoretically you can reduce the tariff 0%, but it's not happen practically anywhere in the world. So I also believe always that the deregulation and zero tariff is the must. And one of the economic principles also say, with the trade, everybody better off. So with that principle, it's a theoretical and the textbook version. But what happened in the USA case, as the Professor Anura clearly mentioned, Sri Lanka is the very, very minor and almost not significant in the USA economy. And our surplus, when you look at, and the USA side, we have surplus. The other side in the Vietnam and the next countries, we have the deficit, that one. So in that case, our negotiation power in that case, the first steps where the negotiation power is very late. And also the export, those in the most elastic and not the necessary goods. In that way, I think even we negotiate, very difficult to get only sympathetic ground. Maybe we can get the kind of a tax reduction like you mentioned, the 15% or something. So that is the thing. And also we have to look at, always I think we are in the different world, or we try to go to different direction. What the government, Sri Lankan government, we have to look at, rather, of course, the first steps maybe the negotiation also have to do, but we have to look at the trade diversification. So that is the important thing. We have to create within the country enabling business environment to reduce the cost. For example, now let's say if USA economy, we export $10 items. So our exporters on average, not in Sri Lanka, all the average, get the 8% profit, which means the cost is $9.20. Now with this 30% tariff, now the recent development 30%, like the negotiation, like you said, maybe 20 and 40%. 30% tariff, so our exporter invoice exactly 69, we say $7.70. Then our exporters lost $1.30. So in that way, we are very, very weak position. Our exporters may lost their job, businesses. And so that's what I say. We shouldn't, run, if the Trumps or the USA take the decision, this external shock happen, just go that direction and try to negotiate, or maybe the Euro take some decision, go around that one. What we have to do as a country, we have to look at the internally and try to reduce the cost of production. So in the cost of production, when I have done a lot of research in this SME sector, our cost of production, 30%, rather 33%, the transaction cost. That happened unnecessary regulation, unnecessary business environment, enabling business environment, is that transaction cost very high in Sri Lanka. With that only we can do, because if you look at the Vietnam, if you look at the India even right now, if you look at Bangladesh, their cost of production reduced.
Yeah, so Professor, just for me to understand and putting down the points that you're mentioning, so what you're trying to say is, like a cricket match, if someone plays the ball in one direction, the government should not go behind that. What they have to do is try and reduce the cost of production and make Sri Lanka an enabling environment for proper exports. Am I right, Professor?
Yeah, exactly. That cricket match, the bowler, captain and the fielders has to discuss, and the bowler has to bowl exactly, and then the fielders sit there. So that kind of a negotiation, get together, make the decision with the advisor is very important. But if it's not happening, so ultimately you lost the match.
So, but that means, Professor, the government is not doing what is required. They are just
that's exactly what I try to say.
Yeah, so
I'm not saying that the current government, Sri Lanka throughout not properly. Now what happened when you do, I also work with the different projects and even the World Bank and the ADB, IMF, ILO, whatever. So what happened, since they give money for us, they try to get from us what they want. That exactly happening, because they are the one who give. If they, now I can give one example. I don't tell this donor agency, but they, when write the report, they ask to write write the Russia, fight with the Russia, war with the yeah. So since we did not write that terms, and they reject the report. What they are the one give money, because we always try to, I use the word, I don't know whether it's acceptable, we try to begin. So the begin now 70 years, 75 years, we did that one. We had to stop somewhere.
So are you trying to say, Professor, going to the US on the 18th of this month is not going to be useful?
No, not going to be, it's useful, but that we shouldn't depend only that. That is the short term and the negotiation. But the long term, we have to address the structural issues.
Right.
Like we have to look at the root causes, and we have the problem with the supply side.
Right. So I'll come back to you, Professor, momentarily after I finish with the others also. Thanks a lot. Professor S.P. Premaratne, Department of Economics, Colombo University. I now move my attention towards Aminda Lakmal, Senior Lecturer, Department of Marketing Management, Dayaratne University. The interesting thoughts were made by Professor Aruna as well as Professor Premaratne with regard to these US tariff structure. But I want to ask you a question. Why are we going with a begging bowl, as Professor Premaratne pointed out, when we have the opportunity to bring down our costs? But if you look at the cost structure itself, just a couple of weeks ago, we increased our electricity tariffs significantly. And this is affecting all the businesses in the world. So this is also contributing to the 30% that Professor Premaratne is talking about. What we are doing is, we are not trying to address the problem in the home front, but we are trying to play to the hands of an external party. Why are we doing that as a country? Because we've been doing it for such a long time. At least now with this new government in play, we want to do things differently, because one of the allegations leveled at this government is they are dancing based on the tunes of international actors. Like example, you may agree or disagree, like the IMF. The electricity tariff hike came because of the IMF regulation. So I just want to understand from you, as an individual and a senior lecturer, why are we doing this? Why are we not arresting the problem at home and trying to fight a war outside?
Yeah, thank you very much for the interesting question. I'll make my answer in a holistic way. First, the direct question, why we are not doing, as the professor said, why we are not doing the reduction of cost inside the country, whereas we are going in a begging mentality to the USA. So the first thing is, as Professor Aruna said, we are the small fish in the big tank. We have to accept that. Even though we make zero tariff, from USA imports, that will be not having any substantial impact on US economy. Or else what we can do is like we can increase the number of imports we get from USA. That is also not possible with our economy.
Yeah, now Indonesia decided to bring down five
Boeings or machines.
Like
we can't do
15
that, right?
Boeings.
We can't do that, right? With the economy.
50.
And also, I will add some points to Professor as well. Now, if we reduce to zero, then government will also reduce some income as well from the tax. As well as when we reduce zero tax, other countries are looking at us. So it's not, Trump is not playing an economic game or trade game. He's playing a political game as well, right? So the other countries are looking at us as well. So if we make 0% tax here for US imports, what will other countries will do? So we have to look at that aspect as well, right?
According to WTO, you can't do that.
It has to be equity-based taxation right across the board.
So you have to give the pre-trade.
So what President Trump is doing is playing a game, right? He's playing a geopolitical game as well. Now he said that if the war is not stopped in Russia or ceasefire agreement is not reached, he will impose 100% tax on Russia. So is that a kind of a trade tool? No, it's a geopolitical game that Trump is playing. So that is the additions that I have to do to eminent professors. And come back to your question, right? So we are in a recovery process, right? From 2022, we can't forget that situation. We are on a recovery process. To do so, the IMF has come and requested us to do some things, right? We can have a debate on whether they are right policies or not. I have some criticism about IMFs because they are almost all the policies that they are suggesting is to shrink the economy, but they're expecting to grow the economy. All the policies reduce the government expenditure. So what is the first expenditures that we are going to reduce? Maybe for health, maybe for education, right? Capital expenditure are the recurrent. If we reduce the capital expenditure, what will happen to the growth? But they are saying, do this, right? We can have a debate on that, separate debate. But there is another kind of a forces which force us to go for negotiations. That is the only short-term kind of a tool or short-term remedial action that Sri Lanka has.
So I want to ask you, Aminda, now let's say now there is a thought in the air made by many from the UNP saying that if Ranil Wickremesinghe was the president of the country, he would have made a call directly to President Trump and made this tariffs come down. I don't know why you're laughing, but are you trying to say that Ranil Wickremesinghe can't do that?
This is official negotiations, right?
Right. No, but
it's not personal negotiations. We are talking about official negotiations.
No, but I just want to understand now. There was a letter that was issued by President Trump a couple of days ago. We all saw that. But why isn't it that President Anukumar Dissanayake at least not responding to this letter to President Trump directly and say that he acknowledges the receipt of this letter and would like to discuss further this matter? Usually when we get some communication, we also respond. But why isn't there a response from President Anukumar Dissanayake directly on this tariff?
On the tariff, I guess.
Yeah. On this letter that was sent by President Trump.
Is it about, I'm not aware of this.
President
letter.
Trump sent a letter to President Anukumar Dissanayake saying that the tariff has been brought down to 30%. And he mentioned certain points in this letter saying that if there is transshipments that happens, that will also be penalized. Then he mentions that if the Sri Lankan government wants to enter into trade negotiations, that's something like free trade agreements, that's something that they are willing to look at. And they also mentioned that if you're coming and setting up an operation or a factory in the US, there will be zero tariffs as well. So I'm trying to understand Why hasn't there been a response from President Anukumar Dissanayake for this letter still?
Yeah, I have an answer. I think he's doing the right thing because official negotiations going on, right? And there are official delegates. So that is what the official communication is all about. Why one-to-one communication? That's what the opposition party is bringing, right? So if somebody is here, then he can directly communicate with that particular person and do all the negotiations and all. And in the social media, I saw that somebody, 2-3 months ago, he said that ex-president Ranil Wickremesinghe and Elon Musk is good friends, right? So are these things matters at official communications, official negotiations, delegations? I don't think so. So to me, President Anwar is doing the right thing. He allows his experts to do the negotiations. I mean, he hasn't changed the USA ambassador, not at all. So he's doing the right thing. He allows the people who's capable of negotiation to do it. But the problem... Are you
trying to say that President Anukumar Dissanayake is not capable to negotiate?
Why president is negotiating individually where there is foreign delegates? Why? The president has to overlook those things. But the thing should be done by the experts on the foreign services, right? Experts on the economics, like these two gentlemen.
Right. But I'll come back to you. I'll come back in the second round.
Yeah. So basically, so my point is like what your second question at the very beginning, why we are not doing this cost reduction inside. I think it's a long-term one. We should start now. Right? We should start now, but it's a kind of a long-term process.
Right. I'll come back to you, Amin. Thanks a lot. Aminda Lakmal, Senior Lecturer, Department of Marketing Management, Dayaratne University. Now I move to Sanjeewa Dayaratne, researcher. Sanjeewa, the impact that Sri Lanka's apparel sector, which is the bulk of the exports to the US, has suffered a lot. Many companies have already closed down, we know, and many companies have already gone to countries like India. If you look at MAS, for an example, MAS has set up a big operation in Odisha. It's one of the biggest factories right now in that part of the world. And we are hearing from the grapevine that the taxes that is going to be imposed on India is going to be somewhere around 19%. That's what we're hearing from the grapevine. Those are not concrete information that has come to fruition yet. It's a big problem for Sri Lanka. Why isn't it that there is no serious talk about reviving the country's apparel sector, at least in a situation like this?
Yeah, thank you for inviting the program. I'll try to take it into a little bit more detailed manner. Where we default our external debt in 2022 April, we had two shocks: East attack, which is within Sri Lanka, and the COVID, which came from the external sector. So that was in history, we have been trying to do certain temporary solution for our economy and try to get rid of these time-to-time economic shocks. But what has happened is now is also the similar kind of external shock has been come to Sri Lanka. So we'll have to face it. So why we default in 2022, where we didn't really emphasize, we didn't do any good homework in order to make sure our external sector is strong. External sector in the sense of the ways that the foreign exchange come into the market. So one is major portion is going to the export as well, other than the worker remittances and tourism. So the inability or loosening policy on the improving our export has been witnessed for throughout these years. So it is not has happened this year. So it is a responsibility for the government to look into that aspect. And we believe that, and when we are looking at the manifesto of the current government, they have considered this seriously, because not only it is a mandate for them, but also it is a key important things, because if we are to not to default again in 2028, once we start paying the external creditors in principal payment,
we'll have to make sure that substantial foreign earnings to be coming into Sri Lanka. So there are four dimensions of the foreign exchange coming to Sri Lanka. One is worker remittances, tourism, and the export and FDI. So FDI is pretty much still it is a preliminary level, which is sometimes negligible, but export is pretty important thing. And the tourism and worker remittances can catch up very quickly. At the moment also, worker remittances are growing at about 19%, tourism is also going at 9%. So those are picking well. But in order to improve the export, we need to do a lot of things than improving the worker remittances and tourism. So that has been not placed at the moment. So we have seen the Export Development Board is entirely working on improving our export sector. So this is a good case study where the country was failed on first two external shocks, which was in 2019 Easter attack and 2020 on the COVID, and we default in 2022. Now again there is a shock. But when you look at the impact of the current tariff issue, let's say at the moment majority of our US export is apparel, others are rubber. But if you look at the apparel export, it is about 1.9 billion per year. And actually I believe we'll have to look at it in a different aspect, assuming that we lost about 50% of the apparel export, which is down to about, let's say, 1 billion. So at the same time, we are spending about 40% of the effects importing raw materials to apparel, which we are exporting. So actually what I believe is we need to look at it a net effect. The effects, if the apparel is the effect of the tariff, will reduce our export. Then the amount of effects will be reduced, and it will going to have impact onto our exchange. That is the substantial portion. Thereafter, the losing of the employment, that is a long-term process. But immediate effect would be the effects hit. But when you also looking at the effects effect, if you look at the very short term, right? Very short term, if you are going to lose the 1 billion apparel export, and 40% of the imports is also related to that, actually the effect is about 600 million in real term. So that is why I believe that the current scenario, listening to the other panel members, we know that the government is working on that to bring it to the as much as possible lower level. But actually, in short term, I don't think that we need to be really panic about the situation. There will be short term and long term effect. Short term, what I believe is that we need to educate people in a real impact. With short-term impact, what would be the long-term impact? Short-term impact, I believe that we have spent about half year of the 2025. The impact is coming to the next half years most probably. So this year, we believe that the pressure on the exchange rate would be manageable.
Yeah. But so Sanjeewa, if you look at these numbers, I just want to quickly come back to you on certain points that came to my mind before I open the floor for questions. Now, if you look at the trade balance of imports and exports of Sri Lankan to Sri Lanka and from Sri Lanka, the import stands at 18.7 billion US dollars, whereas exports stand at 17.32 billion, which is approximately around 1.2 billion deficit that we're talking about in the year 2023, that period. So I'm trying to figure out, we are only importing 425 million US dollars from US. And this is a very small number in terms of the amount of imports that Sri Lanka is relying on. And I go back to the question that I asked Aminda as well before, and Aminda's response. If we give a special treatment to the US, which is only 425 million US dollars, what about the others? Because there is some sort of taxation that is involving this 17.32 billion as well. So in order to be fair, and also Professor Premaratne spoke about the WHO won't allow this because the WTO won't allow this because we have a signatory for fair trade and all that. So I'm trying to figure out from you, is it worthwhile to go to the US with a begging bowl, as Aminda said, asking for a reduction in these taxes, because ultimately what Sri Lanka earns through import taxation supersedes than the export number that we're talking about.
Yeah, of course, I don't know whether it's a begging or entire world is at the moment is begging into the US because of the
size of the economy.
Size of the economy. We cannot we cannot fight on that aspect. We can't do a zero tariff anyway due to the regulation, and of course what we should look at it. If you are not mistaken, you also mentioned earlier when we are starting the discussion, it's a good thing what has happened. Right, and if you look at the export to the US before 2010, it out of total apparel export to the total apparel export to the US market, it has been plus 50%. Now it has come down. If you look at this year 2025, it has come down to somewhere around 38%. The shifting has been taken place from the US to the Europe and other market as well. And the export to the US is growing only about 7%. The EU export, especially the apparel, is growing about 11%, and other countries about 10%. So shifting has been taken place from US to the dependency on the apparel export to the US has been up to some extent, seems to be diversification. That is what we need. And on top of that, as Professor mentioned, we need to look at it how we are going to make our apparel to the competitive to the others. And if you look at the tariff is being imposed for the other countries, which is the apparel export, major apparel export to the US, Cambodia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, we are at some sort of a par compared with the competitors who are exporting the apparel to the US, but still we need to negotiate. Why? Some of our exporters are running with a very thin margin. So if we allow to run them a thin margin with the higher tariff, of course in long run they will not sustain their business.
I'm trying to figure out, Sanjeewa, I know at the end of the day reducing this tariff is very important, but I also know most of these apparel companies, the big guns, they are not solely based in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
They have already taken their money and set up shop elsewhere in the world. If you look at the big names that we're talking about, they have operations in India, they have operations in Bangladesh, they have operations in Africa, they have operations in Vietnam. So why must we, as a government, start thinking about these 5 or 6 individuals or 5 or 6 companies that are trying to manipulate the country's economy?
Yeah, the problem is that we know that we need to improve the exports, right? We need to improve the export, and we need to shift apparel export to the other export as well, right? But it is not taking place the pace that we need. So for the time being, we need to fight for the apparel export to safeguard these people. At least if we do not negotiate, what will happen is gradually this apparel export will be moved out of Sri Lanka. Then we will find it very difficult to improve our export. Simply we need to improve our export. So still we are substantially dependent on the apparel export as well. Until we substitute with other different type of export. Tea, rubber is the traditional one. We have large number of other exports. The EDB is trying their best to improve the substantially change from the apparel to the other sectors. Still it cannot be happen in a very short period of time. So we need more time.
We need more time. And by that time, Trump won't be in power also.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Because 4 years from now, there's going to be a US election. He can't stand as a president once again. But that's a different story altogether. We'll discuss on another platform about whether Trump is going to survive these 4 years or not. So I want to open the floor for questions from our journalists. On to my immediate right is Dayaratne, and on to my immediate left is independent journalist Shanthaarchchi. As I said before, you too can join in as far as the conversation is concerned. 076 656 5353, the number to send in your messages via WhatsApp. We'll be delighted to take it to our expert panel tonight on the topic, can Sri Lanka withstand the Trump tariffs and the impact on the Sri Lankan economy? So let's get the ball rolling now with Tariffs.
Thank you. I'll direct my first question to Aminda. Well, after all, we are going to have a delegation sent to the United States to further negotiate and bring this rate down if possible. When negotiating with the US officials, what exactly should our delegation focus on when it comes to requesting a further tax concession? Because the latest example, of course, that we have is Indonesia, 32% now down to 19%, but it came at the cost of, I think, 15 billion odd US dollars in US energy, 4.5 billion US dollars in agricultural goods, as well as 50 Boeing jets. I mean, can we do that as Sri Lanka? We cannot, right? So then what exactly do we need to focus on in these negotiations?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question again. So my points are very simple. I'll tell 2 to 3 points which I think that the delegation team should discuss. Number one is like, it's again a sympathy grounds. We have no other options, to be really frank, in short term. Right? No options, because we are not a big economy and we are coming out of the economic crisis. So the very first thing is sympathy grounds. No worries. So whoever is going to negotiations, it's about sympathy grounds. But major point, but I want to express, now US holds 23% to 25% of our exports, right? But there are the 75%. Whatever negotiations we are going to do with that 25%, don't want to hurt the remaining 75%. So that is the biggest point that I'm going to stress. As a negotiation point, because we have another 75% of exports to the other countries. We cannot hurt that by bargaining the 25%. So we cannot.
That's why I said we're importing 17.32 billion and we're exporting 18.7 billion, and out of that only 5 billion is to the US.
Yeah.
And the remaining is to other countries. And the imports, if you look at it, 425 million. Against approximately around 16.9 billion US dollars of imports. So we have to be very careful in this negotiation process.
Yeah. So we can go all out and say, all in all out and say, okay, we will do whatever you say. We can't do that.
So now this negotiation is completely going to be on a sympathetic ground.
To me, yes. Short term, yes.
Why did they do that?
I mean,
because Trump said that it was all this time it was a one-sided trade that was going on between the two countries, and that was basically the ground that he set for this tariff in the first place. So how can we negotiate through sympathy grounds if it's already, according to Trump, one-sided? Why would he do that?
I want to add to that question.
Yeah.
What
you
said.
In that sense,
now you said that President Aruna can't talk to Trump because it has to be a formal discussion. But a formal discussion is going to place on sympathetic grounds is a big question mark.
Yeah. But we have no options, right? Now, let me answer the question what she asked. Now, why he has reduced 44 to 30? What do you say? What do you think? There was 44. Why have reduced to 30%? Right? So that's what my point is all about, right? He's not playing a kind of a trade game with us. Right? So negotiations.
Why do you think this 14% was reduced?
That's it. I mean, that 14% also is like the power of negotiation as well as the sympathy grounds, right? Sympathy grounds. I mean, not for us, right? Not only for us, the reduction was like for other countries as well. But comparatively,
Bangladesh, they have not gone sympathetic grounds because Bangladesh from 37% has been come down to 35%.
Yeah.
So they have not gone. Then what was the logic there?
Can I?
Yeah.
One thing, sorry. Actually, from 2022 onwards, we are in the IMF program, right? We are the one country who has default, and we are now try to recover our economy. So there is a good case where we can talk to the. I believe that the government.
Sanjeewa, I want to ask Dayaratne's question a different way. Now, see, throughout the discussion, what we heard was, even though we reduce the tariff or remove the tariff or non-tariff barriers, there is no point because US is not going to, sell their product to Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka also not going to import like Indonesia or some other countries, and then we also can't, negotiate in terms of the economic factors, right? then what are we going to offer at the negotiation table? What are we going to
try, no?
If you look at Sri Lanka, we know that Sri Lanka is in a
You can't cry.
Sri Lanka in a very strategic strategic
give me a
location.
second. Now there was a news article also that there is some manipulation on the geopolitics by the US side for this trade negotiation, right? I'm not going to name, and tell the specific things, but there is a issue going on, right? Is it something we are offering them, or is it something we are going to accept?
Let me put it like this: we are in a strategic location in the South Asia, so we'll have to. When we are doing many of the other geopolitical negotiation and even the economic aspect, we are using our strategic location. So that card we need to play.
I was
and
about
also,
to tell what is the difference.
So, but this? I mean, the big question is, okay, is it a military base?
For what are we
going to offer them?
Yeah, what I am trying to explain
because of the location, what are we going to offer them?
There will be a lot of options, whether it's a military base, whether it's other ways of the means of the involving. So I'm not.
That's going to be a big problem.
Not making that statement, but what I try to emphasize is that we are, one thing is we are in IMF program where everybody knows that we hit economic crisis and everybody willing to support.
Yeah, but I just
not only the.
So let's say we buy what you're saying, we buy your argument. Let's look at Bangladesh for that matter. I just want to figure out how this negotiation is going to pursue from this point onwards. So Bangladesh, they chased their prime minister to India as well.
Yeah.
Their country's economy was also in disarray. Now there is a interim prime minister in their country as well. So they have also the sympathetic grounds in terms of a country to score a little bit more, and just like Sri Lanka. But they were only able to reduce the taxation by 2%.
Right.
Whereas Sri Lanka has been able to reduce by 14%.
Yeah.
Why would there be a further reduction on this 30%? And as Shihar said, what are we going to offer them?
What are the options?
Now, I think what Shihar is trying to say is, I will try to articulate what you are trying to say. Shihar, agree or disagree with what you're trying to say. Now, India, the security agreement has not been made public.
Yeah.
So we know that there has been some negotiations that has gone there, and we still don't know what's going on. Whether or not the security agreement has to be made public or not is a different question mark altogether. Is there a hidden agenda by US also to set up something in Sri Lanka in the guise of this 30% tariff? Right, Shia?
Yeah, I mean, we can't represent the government. We can't represent the government, first of all, right? So what we are seeing is, as independently, right? If you look at the last week, the Saudi Arabia engaged with our restructuring process, and they restructure our bonds. Previously, Japan restructure our bonds. Then China and India also restructure our bonds. So that is where their contribution to our economy, to kick up our economy, looking at the other geopolitical matters might be there, but looking at the economic recovery, everybody don't want to push Sri Lanka down. So in that aspect also, we can negotiate where US know that even though we are not borrowed from US, but other countries had borrowed, and other countries have given that flexibility for our economy to recover. Right. So on that aspect, still there is some sort of a space for us to negotiate it. On top of that, the location. So we don't know about how the government manage this location card to negotiate certain.
So Professor Premaratne, if you look at the US doesn't have a base in Asia, South Asia. That's the only place that they don't have a base. If you look at all the countries, they have a base in Qatar, so that's covered in the Middle East. They have a base in the Pacific, and all that is covered. The only place that they don't have a military base is South Asia. Is this a is this trying to set up a base in the South Asian region or the Indian Ocean for that matter?
You try to put me and get an answer from me, yes? No, that's the geopolitics play the big role. I don't think so the Trumps play that game this time, because this tariff issue is a global issue. Is Sri Lanka also only one point? And purpose is not just, I think that politically and bring the USA military to Sri Lanka initially, because that's initially trade with the China and the USA. Now, what happened right now, China side become, adding Japan, and they become stronger. Now maybe this, now you go negotiation table, USA may use that strategy, bring the USA based in Sri Lanka, that may happen. But we can't debate hypothetically this thing happen.
No, I mean, the question is, what are the options? I mean, military base is one option, one of the many options.
One option, geopolitics.
What are the other options we have because of our locations?
Yeah, many factors have to take to table. But depend on the negotiation power. We can put it, that is the one. Maybe USA can say that other thing also USA can say, you stop all the trade and other negotiation, other things with the China. That also USA side did it. Then the problem here, what I going to say may be critical. In Sri Lanka right now, since our, I would say, wrong or completely manipulate education system, our negotiation power, not only the economic thing, negotiation power is very weak. One is in 15 single only policy, that top level negotiation group right now, not only the language, the other thing also, knowledge also weak, because of that is also language. With that, when you go the negotiation power, in addition to economy, that also matter. So it depends on the negotiation. It may come. In economics, the economics terms, when they have to bring the negotiation, one thing maybe we can ask, we can tell USA, we buy, because that is the based on trade balance. We can buy more from you. Even the cost, that is the cost up, because the USA quality product, we don't have our per capita income not strong enough to buy, of course, the basically from, but still Sri Lanka can negotiate, we buy from more. Another thing also, since the WTO not allow us going to zero tariff, but we can have a negotiation with the pre-trade agreement with the USA and Sri Lanka. So that's exactly what you have to do, not right now, sometime back also.
Professor, what about LNG? I mean, a couple of years ago, there was a company who wants to set up here and, bring in LNG from US and...
That's the other point. Another thing also, Sri Lanka, always Sri Lanka right now also, we need the foreign direct investment. And that also what we can, maybe our negotiation teams can allow, or maybe interesting, many USA investors give the facilities here, so then they can come. That's also another thing.
So what you say is we have to write the same letter to Trump, where Trump has in his letter said, if you want to set up companies here, we will facilitate. With least, within 2 weeks we will...
Special facility.
Special facility. So we have to write the same thing to Trump now.
Economic and the business environment, no, I would say, no proper foreign direct investors come to Sri Lanka. Because, like I said, the transaction cost is very high.
I stand corrected. In the Indian Ocean, the US and the UK military bases there. That is Geogasia. So I stand corrected there. But I just want to ask you, we are getting a lot of questions on this negotiation team that is going. So one person who is watching the show tonight has asked a question with regard to the composition of this team. The question is, the composition of our negotiation team does not have a businessman nor a top-class economist who understand the business world.
That's another point. Right now, many teams, not only the negotiation team, you can see many committees and no economics, mainly the accountants and those kind of, that also matter. We would say maybe they can negotiate economics term, but the basic economics very important for that, especially they go through the economic principle. So that is also matter to understand the heartbeat of the issues and things.
Professor Aruna, now this diversification, export diversification has been spoken for a long time, right? The focus is that we should not depend mainly on one or two countries, right? But if you take the export composition, we are mainly depending on EU and then the US. Second highest export destination is the US. Now, what are the steps? Not only this government, successive governments have taken to diversify this. I can tell you now, the previous governments, they came up with this FTA, which was strongly opposed by the current government party, current ruling party when they were in the opposition, right? Now, is the FTA an option, right? Now the FTA with maybe India, comprehensive FTA with India, and then China. Now I think there was an FTA with Singapore, which was then later cancelled, right, because of the strong opposition. How do you see that, and what is the short to medium term solution for this diversification of export market?
Yeah, really, because that is the one option actually just Sri Lankan economy can reach to the export target, because now the government realized that because end of year 2000, it means year 2025, our export target is 18 billions, and by year 2030 it should be 40 billions export incomes. But that is a target here. So go to that target needs some sort of economic diversification, because a very common slogan since I think since 1982 this point is always whatever the government is talking that
now, I just want to
diversification.
Just a quick question.
Right.
I don't want to interrupt you, Professor, but you're saying 2030 40 billion.
40 billion target.
2030.
2030.
How are they going to do that?
Yes, that is because end of this year is 18 billions.
Because up until from 1948 to now,
yeah,
it has been only 18 billion.
Yes.
From 2023, after Anukumar Dissanayake took over power, how can it go to 40 billion by 2030?
It means that by year 2030 we have another 5 years.
So, now for such a long time, for nearly 75 years of independence in Sri Lanka, we have only done 18 billion.
Yeah.
How is it possible for us to double this amount?
Yes,
Shamir, the game changer could be the opening up the market FTA, because when you compare the Vietnam and Sri Lanka, Vietnam was far below Sri Lanka in early 90s. Now its export revenue is I think around $90 billion.
Yeah, but if you look at the...
Because of they opened the market.
Yeah, open market. But if you look at the number of years that took that, it took nearly 14 to 15 years for them to come to that position. So how is Anukumar Dissanayaka's government going to do it in 7 years?
Yeah, because...
Or 5 years. No, 5 years, no?
That is the target, estimated target. And also they have some plan actually, because within this year also additional 2 billions within, it means last year 15 point something.
Is he talking about only exports of goods?
I believe it is not only the merchandising.
Exactly, services as well, right?
Yeah,
the services.
Right, total value is I'm talking.
So this will be a big amount, because now they're taxing 18% on the services.
Digital services.
Yeah, really. Because now but I want to say that the target is actually damaged by this kind of external shocks. So this is also the Trump's strike position, or whatever the geopolitical situation that would be impact on our target.
No, but Professor, now you are also the chairman of a very reputed state institution as well. You're the chairman of that, so you handle exporters quite well. If the exporters think in the same way, thinking that an external shock is going to affect us, no export company in Sri Lanka is going to survive. But if you look at the crisis that happened just a couple of weeks ago between Israel and Iran, If exporters said, guess what, we can't do anything about it, we are going to sit and wait until the war finishes, our export figures and all the companies will be closing down. Why can't the government be agile to situations like this? As Aminda said, you know, we can't go with a begging bowl anymore. We have to be understanding the others also, other aspects also.
Yeah, really, because but I understood that the reason for given some set of reduction just based on the IMF program, because the target is initial target of the IMF is macroeconomic stability. Now just we reached to that one actually. Now we reached to the macroeconomic stability, and now we are in breathing stage. That second stage is a development stage. Then what I happen to know that our negotiation team already emphasized those points here now, because but we have faced some the trouble situation and we just starting some economic stability. Our next step is to development process, because IMF's basic target is macroeconomic stability. So the next step is economic development. Just for economic development, we need some funds or the whatever the support from the ADB or the World Bank, the development banks, and the growth model. We should have to implement for the growth model. For that purpose, we need some set of support from the US side.
The problem is, Professor, what I'm trying to figure out is, there is 1.3 million capital expenditure that has not been
1.3
trillion rupees that has not been spent by the government so far for capital expenditure.
Right.
So you're telling me that you're trying to expand, or the government is trying to get 36 billion to 40 billion US dollars by the end of 2030, in 5 years from now. I am, as a journalist, starting to think, is this also another election promise that is made by another political party just to retain in power in the longer run? Because if you don't spend money on capital expenditure, that means you won't get a return on investment. You can't save this money and show it in your balance sheet saying, guess what, I saved so much of money. At what cost is it going to come? So this is not going to be achieved.
Because you know that, I will give the answer for that one, because just you can see the reality actually, because just after the year 2030 you can observe the situation, but the
we don't want to wait until 2030.
Yeah, right, but capital expenditure is a slow expenditure. The reason actually, you know that many projects already stopped actually. The previous investments, whatever the large scale project, unfortunately due to economic issues and all some previous issues, they already stopped the project. Therefore, the government, they should have to do some refeasibility here. Okay, the cost benefit analysis here. Just observing all the economic point of view, they should restart the business here or restart the project here. That's the main reason for quite delay this year, but
which means,
I'm sure that will not happen year on year because of the near future. But this year, yes, I agree with you.
So now for the last 7 months, for the last 7 months, what capital expenditure has been used or done by this government?
Now already spent around 15% up to
on what? On what?
15% up to 1.3 trillion.
Out of total.
Yeah, but on what? On what?
That is for initial investment. That is basically for venture capital.
Is it for roads? Is it for hospitals?
Yes, actually, because for roads or some infrastructure and some project. For example, now the Kadota Kandy Highway, the stage 1, they totally stopped the project here previously. Now restarting. Before restarting, we should have to do some feasibility. And now some.
Professor, now last year we had a growth of 5%.
Okay.
Now
5.
if we 5%,
Yeah.
if we don't spend this capital investment, or expenditure this year, our growth is going to get slow next year or next year, because we are not going to have the capital investments on roads, on hospitals, on schools, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, if our growth is going to slow, then we are facing a risk of another default.
2.5%. That's what the World Bank says.
Yeah, but yes, I will give the figure. The first quarter, 3%. The growth rate is 4.7. Unfortunately, agriculture become a minus 0.7, right? Based on the industry and service sector, 4.7. Our target is 5, but that is also because of the agriculture sector minus 0.7. But end of the year, our target is actually the 5.5 or around 5 to lakh. But that is not enough. We need more than that point. It means at least 7 point or 6.5 growth rate for repaying our loans here. That is our target.
Yeah, but how is it going to come with all the taxes and new taxes? I mean, see, those are deterrent of economic growth.
That is one side. But we already face some fiscal trouble.
No, let's put this into a perspective in the numbers.
Just to correct, you mentioned that the 1.3 trillion is capital expenditure, and you know that our budget was passed on April. So only now we have about 5 months fiscal data. So 5 months fiscal data, as Professor mentioned, we have spent about only 300 million, which is a 15% of the total one. So the next couple of quarters only, these things will be...
No, Sanjeewa, the issue what you have to understand is the procurement. Now in Sri Lanka, if you go to the process, procurement, if you follow the procurement process, you need 6 months to get the fund, approved and start the project. Which means if you start in May, the actual project you can start in November, right? For these 6 months, you have to go to this procurement process. You have to go through this procurement process.
Yeah, fair enough. But my argument is that anyway the budget passed on April. So the first quarter we didn't have much time to spend on the capex expenditure. Now only the government, we are seeing that the provincial council election has completed and the people are appointed. But now only the infrastructure projects are being, the money is being deployed. And we have seen the market liquidity also has come down because of the state bank's excess money which is been rolling out to the project. So even though we have seen very slow expenditure from the capital expenditure for first quarter, we believe we have seen, when you look at the market numbers, the liquidity numbers, we have seen the money start deploying. So we believe that the next couple of quarters it will be pushing up, and we very well accept that the efficiency is not that great.
Yeah, so
we know that.
I just want to ask Professor Aruna, now let's look at this on a numbers perspective for us to understand, because today's topic is about Sri Lanka's economy as well. Let's look at this on numbers. Now, Sri Lanka has a reserve right now at 6.3 billion US dollars at the moment. So that is because we are not paying our debtors at the moment. In 2028, we have to start paying our debtors, which is approximately 4.5 billion US dollars. So when you look at these numbers, we have a swap agreement with China for approximately 2 billion US dollars. So that means we are only left with 4.3 billion US dollars. So in 2028, when we start paying our loans, we'll be back to having a reserve of only 300 million US dollars based on the numbers that we're talking about.
IMF target is $14 billion. We should have $14 billion.
Yeah, but I'm trying to figure out how are we going to get that?
Because end of this year target is actually, the IMF target is 7 billion. Now almost, yes, as mentioned, 6.3, okay. End of this year, 7 billion. And the next year, additional 2 is a 9 billion by end of year 2027. And so 26 and 2027 target is 13 billion, not 14. IMF target is 13 billion. Okay, so now the situation is quite okay, but it means
Professor, the problem is if you look at these IMF programs, only India in 1991 did not default after the IMF program. They were able to recover under Prime Minister, Finance Minister at that time, Manmohan Singh.
Yes.
They were the only country. But all the other countries that have gone through a full IMF review has defaulted again. Let's look at Argentina for an example. Let's look at Greece for an example. All these countries defaulted. Why wouldn't Sri Lanka default again?
Sorry. So then that is not correct, because out of the total 50 countries, in 50%, but they have moved to the second default, it means. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so now we already started. It means by year 2028 we'll start for the repaying. Minimum amount is 3 to 4 billion.
Yeah, 3 to 4 billion US dollars.
That is correct. Okay. So that's why we always emphasize that need some structural changes, right? Very strong structural changes necessary, because India is starting repayment in 1999 onwards, because they totally restructure their situation, especially for the trade liberalization and also the trade liberalization policies and labor policies, land policies, regularization policies, everything changed. And also after the 1991 to 1995 government, the new government, but they apply the same rule, same path, same road. They have never changed that one. That's the main reason for.
That's the main issue with Sri Lanka, right?
In
So
Sri
you're
Lanka
saying-
context, we
saying-
should have to start that.
So what you're trying to say is, let's say Kumar Dissanayake government collapses in 2028, when a new government comes into
no,
play,
never.
they have to do the same thing.
No, never. They will
What do you mean
start
never?
the reform.
What do you mean never?
Just one.
His
No, I
government will not
think
change.
they had these permanent
the reform.
secretaries, right?
Okay.
And
We'll
they
start
had the
the reform.
permanent secretaries,
Secretaries in
and they
place.
had the policies, right? Even though the government changes, they don't change the
Policies don't
policies,
change. That's what I
right?
mentioned here.
That bureaucracy is very strong in India.
Yeah.
right?
So
That's the main reason.
You're saying even if Kumar Dissanayake's government falls in 2027 or 28, the government who comes into play will have to follow the same steps.
Will not change, and also the next 10 years, just same policies.
Yeah, just want to
Yeah,
correct
yeah,
one thing.
yeah.
You mentioned that we are not paying anything at all. So,
No, we are paying.
we are
We have a three
multilateral
type of
and
multilateral,
even for the
we
interest
have-
even
payment,
the
right?
Indian SOP we have
we have
reduced.
paid, yes, and we have paid the Bangladesh swap as
SOP
well.
as well. So at the moment we are start paying,
Yeah.
and this year March we have start paying the restructured past due bond as well. September we are going to pay. So it and on top of
But the
that,
lump sum, Sanjeewa, comes in 2028.
yeah,
which is
2020 is the principal payment which we
28,
need to pay.
Sanjeev, now there's a strong connection.
Professor Premaratne, for us to understand now, you heard what Professor Aruna Shanthaarchchi was saying. You can agree to disagree with what he's saying as well, because there is an open discourse. I'm trying to figure out from you, what are your thoughts on what Professor Aruna said about the country's economy and all that and more?
I think that's a good question, but not critics or saying something against Professor Aruna.
Yeah.
And now, what I believe always regulation and the policies cost to the economy. So this going to wrong direction or bad direction, because those regulation as a substitute and the cost to the economy. That has to government clearly look at. One of the reasons I think they going to introduce or increase the tax digital service also. That right now we live in the fifth industrial revolution. Digitalization is everywhere in the economy. For example, now the job creation in average about 60% job created, startup created related to data and digitalization. That may cost a lot to the economy, though some time back we did a study for ADB and World Bank. Also, we predicted to with this tax structure, because we are right now above the optimal level. With that, 2000 short term we can get the gain after 2028. This is not because of debt repayment, because of this tax structure right now above the optimal level. So Sri Lankan economic growth got to negative. So that also the World Bank predicted right now, ADB predicted right now. So we did that, our prediction also. We have published a book and article also if someone want to read it. And there another thing also.
So you also 2028, Professor, is going to be negative.
Negative.
Because of the high taxes.
Because initially we will look at the only the other thing constant, the tax structure, because right now we have above the optimal level, basically the direct tax.
So what you're trying to say is, what Professor Aruna is saying, he's in a dream world when he says the country is going to be on the right track.
And rather say in dream world, I can't see any action to reach there.
Just one point. World Bank last year also just tell us for a minus, no, but we are getting plus,
No, but that is because of Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Yeah, but now.
No, that was because of the lower base.
Whatever
Professor,
the
it was because of the lower base in the previous year.
Whatever the leader just want to say
No,
that
but now,
World Bank
yeah,
values
but if you look
projections
at
are not always
now the
correct.
point is, Professor, with your government, our government is taxing 30% on exporters. The highest tax rate ever.
Adding more than that.
Yeah,
About
so-
it coming to about 40,
Yeah.
around 50.
Yeah, so
48, I guess.
So, how can exporters survive? Don't be surprised. There were several garment industries that closed down. Don't be surprised. Other industries will also close down in Sri Lanka. Don't be surprised.
No, I did not finish what I said is also, and also the well acceptable argument also, usually the government compared to the private entity done inefficient. There are a reason also because the government officers work for 3-4 years and their personal agenda not like that. So with that also cost to the economy right now, the way the government is running, that also may be the negative effect. Though the government takes some action right now, but I call it the regulation, that also the long-term cost to the what you so-called pre-economy.
Sanjeewa, now we are in an IMF program, right? And we have given targets, right, to be achieved this year, next year, and 2027. Now, with this tariff, which is an external shock, definitely we won't be able to achieve those targets, right? In your view, what are the things we have to negotiate, and what will be the impact on the economy because of this tariff coming into effect?
Yeah, the IMF quantitative targets, main quantitative targets are revenue, net reserve levels, and the inflation. Anyway, we have not achieved the inflation, but both the other targets have been already met.
I mean, we are below the target, right?
We are achieving the target, and if you look at the
inflation,
revenue,
we are below the target, right?
Even inflation, we are not achieving. I mean, we'll have to achieve at least 2% plus or minus 5. So that has not been achieved. Other than that, the revenue targets we have achieved, and the net international reserves, all those things we have achieved. The problem what will happen is with this tariff, if we are not going to have the enough amount of export, effects will be reduced, and it will be have impact on the net international reserves. So that is the one that is in the trouble. As the Professor correctly mentioned, 7 billion is our target at the moment. Last month it down, not 6.3, actually again dropped down to 6.1 billion. But it is not accounted for latest IMF tranche, and there is another IMF tranche is also expected. So we believe that the achieving the net reserve by end of this year would not be a substantial effect from this one. But the problem, that is why I just want to mention, there will be short-term effect as well as a long-term effect. From the short-term effect is for this year, for the next 6 months, meeting the IMF targets, revenue targets, we don't think that will be a substantial effect, because our revenue is growing at about 19%. Expenditure only growing at 9%. So fiscal deficit, because of the not spending the capex, it has dropped down to about 27%. So, but we are expecting that we will be able to maintain the fiscal deficit that has been projected. That LKR point of view, we are much better. We will be able to achieve the IMF target.
But what will be the impact on the rupee because of what's happening now? I mean,
that is why, for example, if it is short term, 2025. If we are going to reduce, if we are having, we are going to have a 50% reduction of the US, the apparel export to the US, which is going to go down about 1 billion, we are going to lose. And it is a gross amount. If you look at the imports that related with the 1 billion, net effect is 600 million, which is about, out of the merchandising export, which is 12%, it is a small amount which we can negotiate. But my problem is not meet in the short term, but meet in the long term issue. Because as we know that 2028 we are going to start paying the principal payment, it is very important for us to achieve the higher growth in the export. Professor correctly mentioned merchandising export and service export at the moment is 18 billion. We have a target of substantial amount. Actually, if you take that number, assuming that it is 20 billion, if you take 10% growth, every year 2 billion adding. So it is already, if you are going to achieve even the 10% growth in the merchandising export and service export, we are going to hit about 35 billion. It's not if you look at the historical numbers, it looks like a magic. But if you look at the mathematically numbers, it is possible.
Yeah, you don't
assuming that,
you don't do economics based on Excel sheet, no? There has to be pragmatic realities, all that has to be taken into account.
We'll have to take
you can easily put 10% and say every year 10%.
We have to take some assumption. So let's say we have to take some assumption, right?
But
we can't predict. No? We can't predict another 2 years there will be another Israel-Iran war. So assuming all those, looking at all those situations are comfortable.
Now, I don't know whether you heard just a couple of hours ago, Israel attacked Syria. So what's going to happen globally is not in the control of
Yeah, of course,
Sri Lanka.
that is under
so we have to be agile
Correct.
to all those situations.
Correct.
Now, if Sri Lanka is looking at increasing its revenue for tourism, if they're looking at 4 million tourists to come to Sri Lanka, where are they going to stay? Do we only have 25,000 hotel rooms in the country?
So 108,000. 108,000.
No, I mean Colombo. Colombo only 25,000. So how can you go to 4 million tourists with that number? It's not possible at all.
No,
Yeah.
not only that, 4 million means it's almost like 20% or 20 or less than 20% of our population.
Yeah.
So you have to do the production, for the
If
consumption.
you look at right now, we're only hitting 2 million with so much of tourist arrivals. If it goes to double that amount, so I mean, you must be aware of these marketing strategies that has to be put in place. Marketing alone is not enough.
Yeah.
There has to be so much of groundwork that needs to be done. Do you think the government has the muscle to do that?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much for coming back to me again. And I feel like I'm the one who's victimized more in the panel. But it's okay. It's okay. That's how media. I mean, you guys are asking a regression answers for a multiple regression for me.
What do you mean?
There are no one-to-one impact on a particular cause and effect. There are multiple cases.
Yeah.
Right. When I was trying to explain the multiple cases, you were distracting me to some other point. Right.
No,
That's okay. That's how media works.
Right? Not media. I mean, the thing is, this is only a 2-hour program.
Yeah, I know.
That's why I told you. I can let you talk whatever you want.
That's how media works.
So you have to keep your questions as brief as possible.
Yeah.
Just to understand about this aspect.
I'll come to that point after answering that why Bangladesh got 2% and what my thoughts, right?
Yes, please.
2% and why Sri Lanka got 14% because of the geographical location, not only about the military, but about the shipping lines and crews, right? That is also a factor that we have to consider. We are the closest country for the 80% global trade, shipping trade, right? So that can be another factor. That's why I told for one particular problem there can be multiple reasons, right? Okay. Next question.
I have a follow-up question, but because you told me that I'm interrupting you, I'm not going to ask you that. But I'll ask you after you finish this.
Sure.
Global trade.
Sure. Yeah. Then about the marketing strategies about Sri Lanka, and do we have the firepower to do that, right? So basically, this government is showing the right direction in terms of using public money. That is not a question for anyone, right? So that is one particular starting point. We are giving a symbolic, government is giving a symbolic indication, right, that we are heading into a right way. Then stopping corruption won't itself give the development. It has to be accepted, right? So there should be proper strategies, right? So in terms of proper strategies, let me talk about three things, right? Just allow me to finish, right?
Sure. Don't interrupt you. We interrupt you if you have a question.
So now this tariff, US tariff that we are talking about, is a good wake-up call for Sri Lanka. Why I'm saying so? Number one, right? We are too dependent on few countries in terms of imports. Now, if you take US, 23%, not only imports, not only exports, but the other two ways of coming, foreign currency, foreign remittances, as well as tourism, we are too dependent on few countries. Too dependent. Now, in terms of foreign remittances, 90% of foreign remittances come from top 10 countries. 80% comes from top 5 countries. That means Middle East region. You all know it, right? Now, tourism, let's say tourism now, that is the discussion point at the end. Tourism, 70 or 69% of tourists comes from only top 10 countries. Again, the same question. So, now it's the right wake-up call. Now we should formulate strategies for 5 to 10 years to attract more and more countries in terms of tourism, as well as more and more countries in terms of foreign employment, right, like skilled labor to European markets, right, as well as export market diversification, right. So that is the starting point, a long-term strategy. That should be the long-term strategy of this particular government. Then the question he asked was like firepower. Or do we have the capacity to do it, or human resource capacity? Let me tell you, in terms of state, not the government, state, right? So the problem is in the middle layer management right now. Middle layer management, we have a problem of capacity and skills. Why? Almost all the government employees was filled up to the lower level, right? Now it's 10 years gone, 2005 to 2025, 20 years ago. Now these people with only experience in terms of number of years has come to middle layer. Now they don't have that much of capacity, right? So first thing that this government should do is the capacity development of this government officials, because state officials, because that they are the people who is going to implement the strategies. That is number one, and that is also a focus area of this government, right? I think President has clearly identified. He said that this Natabun Rajya or something like that, right? So that is a very correct point. He understood it, right? So basically, what my point is for your question is like they are capable people, not only from NPP governments, but from different political views. So we need to get all the things. I mean, government has shown very good blue lights for that. I mean, they didn't change the Secretary of Financial Ministry. Right? They had plenty of reasons to change him, but didn't. Right? Even the USA ambassador didn't change. Right? So there are capable people. Just government wants to get almost all the capable people at the top levels and do it.
So you're saying appointing a former member of parliament to the post of Treasury Secretary is okay?
Now?
Yeah.
Dr. I think he's like capable to do it. So we have to think about the capability
so
and also the credibility.
Okay.
And also the credibility.
No, political appointment is okay.
Political appointment is okay.
Now, when Ajit Niwat Cabral was appointed as the governor of the central bank, after stepping down from
State Minister
post, the NPP at that time made a big fuss about it.
He had previous allegations, but do Dr. Harshan has previous allegations?
Just we cannot compare with the
it's a wrong comparison. To me, it's a wrong comparison.
But it's good to hear from you that you know the government wants the support of everybody, because what we hear from the government officials is that the government is not ready to trust them still.
It takes time, to be really frank. If you take
this is what we hear from the government officials, top government officials. They tell us that the government does not basically want to trust us, so they are not openly discussing anything at the moment.
Because this is not what we said, Aminda. What President Anukumar Dissanayake said in political forum was the governor of the central bank and the Treasury Secretary article. They have to both, Sirivardhana, who just retired, both have to be put in jail. This is not what I said.
Yeah.
And then after you all came into power, they still remain. So that's a good thing.
Okay, is it good or bad? I'm just asking. Not about story. Is it good thing or bad thing?
No, I'm asking you, what was said in the political fora, is it okay? Is that good or bad?
Sorry?
What was said in the political podium, saying that these two have to be jailed for what they're doing for the country's economy, and after coming into power, keeping them in their post until they retire or until they resign or whatever it is, that's okay.
Yeah, political stories and governing the country, it should be kept aside.
But that is not why this government is in power, no?
I mean,
You can't say
I mean,
that. No, you can't.
I mean,
Now,
that's
example.
good. If that's good.
Now, we spoke about electricity tariffs. Electricity tariffs were supposed to be brought down by 1/3. Remember?
Yeah,
The
it
fuel
was said
price.
by the government.
Fuel prices were supposed to be brought
But
down.
nobody is looking that the electricity tariff was reduced by 31% to 20% in January. Why you are not saying that? Why are you not talking about it?
And then
I
it
mean,
was-
media is always going around the negative things, but you know, now the effect, marginal effect, is still plus
Yeah.
than the previous government, isn't it?
No, that is true. We are not denying that.
Okay.
But what we are saying is what was promised in the now example. You all said that the 36% pay tax is going to be brought down to 24%. You all are going to increase the threshold from 500,000 to 800,000.
Let me be frank. Some of the
nothing happened.
statement was issued without knowing the real condition. That has to be accepted. They were not in the power. No, I have to be really honest, right? So some of the statement that they have.
So you all
given-
miscalculated everything.
That's what we are saying. Not about economic conditions. Some of the statement that the government, I mean, this government has stated, right, before electing, was done without the real, without the understanding of the real government conditions. That has to be accepted.
What you now say is like the government is ready to correct itself after seeing the reality.
Yeah, I mean, to be really frank, right?
But no one is coming and saying that, no.
I'm saying no, you're asking from me, right? So I'm saying it, right? So we have to accept that, no.
We would love to hear that from people like Sunil Hadunes.
I don't know,
Love to hear it
because
from
I don't know.
Harsha.
You have to ask it from them, right? So what my personal point is,
We would
right?
love to hear that from Chaturanga Singh.
Chanduranga might say it.
But he has not said, he has come on the show, he has never said that.
Okay. Maybe you have not asked.
We always ask you, trust me.
Just I want to clarify one thing. Actually, just the most suitable persons for the government selected for the as a secretary for the finance, because
Yeah.
I know that personally. Just I am working under the Minister of Finance.
No, but that's very
that is
no,
okay.
No, but that's
That's
very
subjective.
subjective.
That's
Yes,
very
but
subjective.
anyhow,
For you, he may be good. For
Right.
someone
Yeah.
else who's looking from outside. he'll be there.
Professor Premaratne, now one of the key thing we can promote exports is the FTA, free trade agreement with other countries. I mean, going forward, I mean, forget about the past, right? We have been very very much against those the FTAs because of protectionist measures, and also because of some crony capitalists, right? They don't want foreign companies to be here. Going forward, how do you see the FTA develop in this country, and how do you want to see that the expansion of trade with other countries?
What you mentioned in the free trade agreement is a very minor thing, and so what you have to look at, that is also we need. Right now what happening, if you look at the history, we try to sign, or we signed the free trade agreement with the East, where we buy more, if it's been import less. So we have to be the other side, USA and the Europe have to do that. So that is the minor thing. When you pick up the export, we have to do more thing. The Sri Lanka is the economy. Mainly the SME sector is, I'm not saying the engine of the growth. My word is the SME sector, they're killing the economy right now. The way I'm going, SME sector is the one we have to wake up. For that, giving injection money or subsidies SME sector is not worthwhile. What you have to do, look at the cluster industries where the international foreign direct investment and international link also there, identify the leading industries and support. Not the isolate SMEs, isolate traditional businesses. Have
For
to
example?
look at the cluster.
For example, if you can.
For example, now like I mentioned before, IT is the even not the tourism, IT is the key area what we have to look at digitalization. There are telework and this kind of thing. And though we produce, for example, the best quality things, our SMEs, we can't enter that is the geopolitics and the system, we can't enter the international market. For that, we have to link with the international firm. So when you want to develop export or improve the export, we have to target and not the isolate, like I mentioned, isolate SMEs and give support and subsidy. We have to identify the clusters and the networking. They are the large-scale firms and the international firm there. For example, the government sector, like you asked an example, though we get a very little value addition, so we have even the home-based activities and a micro level, SMEs and a local large scale, and also then linked to the international. That way we have to look at. Now the way, I'm not checking the current government, the Sri Lanka always doing, try to subsidize, isolate firms, try to give the subsidies mentality. So that doesn't work. So have to look at the, like I mentioned, leading potential industries, potential sectors, and then give the support. Otherwise, again, the burden to taxpayers right now, their government has to increase more and more. The way right now the government going.
So I have a question for Sanjeewa on this tariff structure. We are getting a lot of questions from our viewers today. This is on the tariff structure. Now the question is, the garment industry is a very lucrative industry, and the profit margin after all expenses stand at around 60%. If that is the case, why can't they afford 30%?
I don't think that the profit margin is that much high.
Yeah,
to be
so
honest.
this is a question.
Yeah,
so,
question, yeah.
So I think the GP must be, the CS ratio will be approximately around 35 to 40%, approximately at least.
Yeah.
The garment industry.
Yeah.
If you look at, I just heard Dan Gomez, who was an ex-employee of MS, saying that when they were doing 2 billion, their net profit was around 200 million US dollars.
Yeah.
So if you look at the profit margin, they must be hovering at around 30 to 35% at least. So why can't they afford 30%?
What I believe is that in order to, why we are fighting for on behalf of them also, to safeguard their interest as well.
Yeah, but
they
have never thought about Sri Lanka. They are going and setting up operations in other countries.
That is a business. As a government, what we have to look at it is how we are going to use these firms. Yeah, the government is not going to do the business. So on behalf of the country, these people are putting capital and doing the businesses, right? So what we need to fight on behalf of them, because of we know that in very short term period, we cannot diversify the product or also diversify the countries. So therefore, we need to safeguard these people until we diversify it. So that is why the government should still fight for the apparel sector on this particular tariff.
Right. Thirdly?
Yes, Professor Premaratne, thank you. Professor Premaratne, I have a small question. Given now Sri Lanka's situation following the imposition of this new 30% tariff, now that it's down to 30%, what lessons can we learn regarding our economy, especially given countries like Vietnam, like we spoke about it earlier, as well as Bangladesh, countries that used to be quite behind us decades ago and are now in a position to handle these kind of external shocks so much better than us. What can we learn from this situation as a nation?
It's already we learned that, right?
Yeah.
Not what can be, that what we have to do, that learn. It's not just like I start with the play in the cricket and the running here and there. So we have to learn improve the situation, make the internal things handle, and reduce the cost of production, and internally make the external business environment user friendly. That's what we have. That way we can get the negotiation power, that we can get the comparative advantage like Singapore doing. So that's the lesson what we have to learn, rather than when the USA put the ball and running to that side, when the UK, now UK give the zero tariff, I think, for our government sector. So then not like going here and there depend on, but you have to do, make this strong, our external business environment. For that, the government has to understand the root causes. Government has to need the plan. Honestly, right now, I can't see such a, even the understanding root causes and just a plan. That lessons, what I can say, the government can get rather than going here and there. Negotiation, I am not saying that the negotiation is not necessary. They ask question, they learn, that's the point.
So very quickly, I mean, before we wrap up, you spoke about this Sri Lanka being in a central location in terms of the global trade. But if you look at countries like Singapore, if you look at countries like India, how they have performed in terms of their ports over the years, it has been exorbitant. There is no comparison. If you look at the South Indian ports, they were doing around 36,000 TUs a day. Now they're doing 86,000. Those are all transshipments that were supposed to come to Colombo. So the way in which that these countries have expanded is tremendous. So if someone looks at Sri Lanka and says Sri Lanka is the next global hub, it has to be taken with a pinch of salt.
So that's what we have to do. We have already
this was the case in 1950s, 1960s. We have lost that competitive edge completely now. Look at Singapore. If you look at all the main shipping lines, Dubai, they have stopped. Dubai, they have set up shops in those countries, and Singapore port is doing absolutely amazingly well. And we've had people from the shipping council here, like Rohan Maskora, is saying that we have never leveraged on these points. So
even on my view, what like Nissanka Senadip was like, it's a good business in a wrong way. We have to, I think our military Navy should
He's
do
the one who said that he wants to bring the JP down to 3%, right?
Yeah. But what not the person I'm telling. What he did.
No, I'm just saying what he said. I just remember.
Yeah. He's the one who said it, right? My point is like his business, right? The business opportunity that he took was a fabulous one.
So why aren't we doing it now?
Now I think we are on the right track. Yeah. We are on the right track. Even the port expansion is there, and there is like I don't know the concept. Maybe Professor Aruna knows the concept, like re-exporting concepts, re-exporting transshipment base is establishing in Colombo. I mean, we have to go with the competition. No option, right? Singapore is there, Dubai is there. They are the leading competitors for us. But most closest destination for that shipping line is Sri Lanka, right? So, in Goal Port, we have the facility to, have this facility of what do you call?
There is no port in Gaul. There's no port in Gaul.
No, there is a small port. No, Gaul has that geographical kind of advantage for ships, right? Which will have a floating services. While floating, we can do the servicing to the ship, right? We have not used it, right? 1,500 ships can be serviced, right, per month, whereas we are doing like 90 or 100, right? Floating shipping service.
Right. Okay. So I want to give each speaker 2 minutes each to wrap up your thoughts about the tariff structure as well as the country's economy. So let's start off with Sanjeewa Dayaratne, researcher, in terms of your closing remarks tonight on the show.
When it comes
I'll give you 2 minutes.
When it comes to tariff, I believe that the impact, we need to look at it short term and long term. I believe that the short term impact can be managed, but the long term impact is the one that is pretty important for us to manage it, because in 2028 we are going to start with repaying the principal payment of the debt as well. So at the moment what we believe is the government has put some sort of strategies to enhance the export. It might not be good enough, but we know that we have substantially lacking on the progress of the export for many years, but at least now we believe that some steps has been taken up. And when you look at the other economic aspect, when we meet in the IMF program targets, all are met. Looking at the domestic economy, the LKR economy, the government is managing, and we believe that it will be a good example or good case study. And on top of that, I just want to mention one other thing. If you look at the countries which have external debt default, majority of countries have struggled to achieve the 5% or 3% positive growth. The studies indicate that at least it takes 5 years. Inflation is pretty high in those countries. So Sri Lanka seems to be a very good example. And the resilience of Sri Lankan economy is strong enough to pass down all those historical examples, and we are showing that we can bounce back very quickly. So I believe that that positive thought need to be taken into consideration, everybody going forward to achieve this or to face these challenges.
Thanks a lot, Sanjeewa. I now move to Aminda.
Yeah,
I promise you I won't disturb.
Yeah, at last I'm getting 2 minutes without disturbance.
without any interruption.
And also on the discussion point for today, right? Most of the questions are here and there. Okay, it's okay. Right, okay. Then what my sum up is like now what we did was not the matter. What we are going to do is the matter, right? So what we are going to do with this, we have to take this as a learning example, and we have to immediately start our strategy towards the market diversification of exports, as well as market diversification of remittances, as well as the diversification in the tourism and hospitality industry. So that is the long-term kind of a strategy that this government should start from right now, right? So it has been, I mean, there are some efforts they have taken, but you know, we have to expedite that, right? Within 5 to 10 years, then we will, I mean, these kind of shocks we cannot expect at what time that is going to happen, right? So we have to have the stable economy to face these kind of shocks, external shocks. And also, as Professor correctly said, now our exports are depend on most of the concessionary exports, GSP pluses or US giving a tariff. So we have to be we have to have the strategies to be competitive in the world market, without this concessionary export efforts, right? So that is paramount important to safeguard Sri Lanka from these kind of unexpected external shocks. So basically to do that, right, so internally there are some changes that we should do, right, maybe to be the structural changes, maybe with the human resources, most of the government officials, so we have to empower them, enrich them, as well as we have to develop their skills. So if you do so, right, I think Sri Lanka will be ready for these shocks, this agile environment, as he correctly said, we call it VUCA environment, right? So we have to get ready for VUCA environment, that is the so in VUCA environment, so we should have this kind of long-term strategies as well as kind of agile strategies. That is what is my summary is all about.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I now move my attention towards Professor S.P. Premaratne.
Yeah, with the today discussion, I start with my conclusion with the 3 economic principles. The one is the trade everyone better off, everybody better off, all parties. Second principle, see the market is the good way to handle the economic activity, but government can improve the result. So with that, I think the government going to maybe the wrong direction, starting with the government can handle the market and the market can improve that wrong direction. So the government has to rethink those of the thing, and also the like I mentioned before, the universal truth is the market efficiency than the government system with that. And also the tariff what we mainly discussed today. So, it's a tariff case. We have to look at the short term, the negotiation, and the go pre-trade agreement. At the same time, it's very important we have to understand, learn the lesson from this, and create the environment, business environment, business friendly. Because I mentioned before, in Sri Lanka, 33% the production cost just because of transaction cost. We can reduce that at least 1%. In that way, we become competitive. Another important area, even not relevant to this one, I have done a study, social protection. We use the social protection wrong way, just say the poverty alleviation. That is the wrong way. So we proposed the National Social Protection, World Bank and the Treasury some time back also. It has five pillars. So if implement 5 pillars properly, it can contribute to the economic growth 60%, which means the economic growth can increase by 60%. The 5 pillars are, we have to look at the protection, which means the social assistance like the Samurdhi and this kind, and also prevention, insurance, and because someone fall down, not only the poor people, even the richest and the people fall down, we need the system for that also. Third one is the promotion. We need the social protection strategy, promote the labor market, create the opportunities. That also we don't have in our social protection. Third one is the transformation, because our people mind always dependence. People try to get something. Now some people don't like this government also, because they expect something give free. Now government is not always given free, then some people doesn't like. That mind also we have to change. And the fourth one is, so all the things, what I mentioned, the fourth thing had to integrate, and the coordination very important. Names of the social protection, so much leakages happen. It's not the corruption, leakages happen. With the coordination, only this one. So that is what I say, the emphasize. I have done a study, contribute to the 60% to the economic growth. With that, my main argument is the government need the strategies, not the regulation. Because of the regulation, like I said, for example, if Sri Lanka, if you want to start a business, at least it take, formally start a business, 10 months. But I have done a study in the Maldives, within 1 day you can do that. In the China right now, within 1 second you can do, because they just scan the code. Now, if the business, foreign direct investment come to Sri Lanka, who wait 10 months, and that cost and time cost also. So we have to address those things. That's the lesson we have to learn, this USA tariff system, while we are doing negotiation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Professor Aruna Shanthaarchchi.
Okay, so now actually my summary is basically this tariff policy is actually beyond our control, because totally just the action taken by the USA and very powerful USA market. And meantime, Sri Lankan's actually negotiation team is very powerful, but I feel that the reason what they have actually reduced from 44% to 30%, and with their powerful argument. So the next point is actually we should have the macroeconomic goal. We should know that by year 2028 we should have to pay it or repay the loan, and annual average is 4 billion, 3 to 4 billion here. So repayment those loans, the government should take many actions. The most important is actually the reform. The economic reform activities should be very powerful, and they should take some immediately reform activities. The trade liberalization, those policies and actions, and also the labor or the lands, regulation policies, everything as soon as possible. The government should take some action to change those things here. Because otherwise, if we cannot reach to the target, unfortunately, our second time default is very dangerous, because as the previous example, Greece, with the second time regulations, the government should have to cut down the pensions, government should have to cut down the salaries, and many actually just cut down activities that would be badly impact for the social benefit side. Therefore, the most important point here now, therefore, there are some solution because the bilateral loan or the multilateral loan, also there are some limitation because did you remember that at the beginning it's only India just help us to with the $4 billion here, no any other nation. And also the multilateral loans also some limited because World Bank or the IMF, because we are in now middle income country, therefore there are some limitation. Therefore, the third option is actually international capital market. We should have to look at the international capital market, and that is also there are some limitation because still we are in B- ranking grade, and just we can only invest for junk bonds here. Junk bond means high interest rate is very high. Therefore, profit must be very low here. So therefore, the structural changes are compulsory. And that is the one possible way to change the economy, and also meantime the foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment is very important because up to point is actually the Sri Lankan is total foreign direct investment only 20 billions, very low level here, within just after the independent to the point now here. So that should be accelerated, foreign direct investment, that's very, very important. And for expand the foreign direct investment, there are some facilities actually, as Professor mentioned, that just to take the approval, there are, I think, 18 approval we should have to take here. Therefore, those are the limitations, should have minimized. And then actually, those are the major points that highlight that for the economic enhancement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Aruna Shanthaarchchi, Department of Economics and Statistics, University of Sabaragama. He holds a post in a government institute as well as chairman. Professor S.P. Premaratne, Department of Economics, Columbia University. Aminda Lakmal, Senior Lecturer, Department of Marketing Management, Dayaratne University. Sanjeewa, Dayaratne Researcher. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening on our show tonight. Thank you very much, Teruni and Shihar, for joining us as you always on Face the Nation. And thank you very much for sending in your questions on the number 076 656 5353. It was a pleasure to take these questions to our panelists this evening as well. I leave it tonight with the quote, as I always do. Tariff policy beneficiaries are always visible, but its victims are mostly invisible. Politicians love this. The reason is simple. The beneficiaries know for whom to cast their ballots, and the victims don't know whom to blame for their calamity. Take care and good night.